Ryan Long says, I don't think it's that Ryan Long. By the way, big shout out to Ryan Long Comedy. That guy's hilarious.
Awesome.
He says,
That
can
dude's
you
great.
go over the law? It seems like 3C negates the entire law. I'm not a lawyer, but a crime scientist, but the idea of sections is weird. So 3 references something, but I can't reference itself since there are no nouns or objects in it. Okay,
3C,
so
is
he's
that talking about the possession?
yes. Do we want to pull it up and talk
Yes, I think
through
that
it?
would be useful.
Okay.
To show people what the heck we're talking about.
Yeah, let me pull up the statute.
I could certainly preface it by saying that 3C, everybody having a problem with it, makes total sense to me because it's written bizarrely.
Yes, it's terrible. It is a terribly written law.
And ordinarily, in a good written statute, you'd also probably have something like a subject to the exception put forth, so that you don't just read the early sentence that says this is prohibited, because frankly, a lot of people don't have the attention span to go and figure out that statute, especially legislatures. So it just wasn't written very well.
Yeah. So let's take a look at it. So we've got in this section, dangerous weapon means any firearm, loaded or unloaded. So I think we can skip the rest of paragraph 1, because if we're contextualizing in this case, yep, firearm's a dangerous weapon. So then we go to section 2. Any person under 18 years of age who possesses or goes armed with a dangerous weapon is guilty of a Class A misdemeanor.
And that's where people stop.
Right. It's a very straightforward statute. It's basically strict liability. If you are in possession of this or goes armed, so either one, if you have it, possession doesn't necessarily mean you're holding it. It means you have ready primary access to it, is the best way to describe it. If you're in your house and there's drugs on the kitchen table, you're in possession of the drugs. Long story short, under the eyes of the law. Now, if the drugs are in your roommate's locked safe, you're probably not in possession of those drugs, even if you're in the same house. So that's why they have possession or going armed. So if you're out carrying it around, they want to have that clear language in there. So then the next section is just different classes of felony. We don't B, C, and D. So we don't really need to go into that. Kyle's not under 17 for D, so we can move straight on to 3A. So the section does not apply to a person under 18 years of age who possesses or is armed with a dangerous weapon when the dangerous weapon is being used in target practice under the supervision of an adult, or in a course of instruction in the traditional and proper use of the dangerous weapon under the supervision of an adult. This is why
the range.
Right. And this is why Dominic Black and Kyle were able to go out and shoot on the range. Dominic Black is 18. We can infer, at least because he was the one who purchased the gun. So they could go out to the range, and he is an adult and can technically supervise his best friend, even though he's just several months younger than him. The section does not apply to an adult who transfers a dangerous weapon to a person under 18 for use only in target practice. So the same thing. Here, you can use this gun so we can target shoot. So next, 3B. The section does not apply to a person under 18 years of age who is a member of the Armed Forces or National Guard and who possesses or is armed with a dangerous weapon in the line of duty. Same thing with an adult transferring it to someone in the armed forces. Right. So long as you're in the line of duty. So military exemption, because some people can join at 17.
Neither of which apply to Kyle in Kenosha on the night in question.
Correct. So we can go ahead and ignore that section for this one. And then we get to the critical one, 3C. This section applies only to a person under 18 years of age who possesses or is armed with a rifle or a shotgun if the person is in violation of section 941.28.
That's the short barrel.
Right. Or, and this is the big, Corey Shirafisi made a big deal over that, or is not in compliance with sections 29304 and 29593.
It's funny. I think the big deal lives in that and.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And for some people, it does. So so 241 or 941.28 is a section about short barrels. 29304 is under 16 is an under 16 hunting statute.
Yeah, these are both hunting regulations.
Right. So 29304 basically says if you're under 16, here's a list of things that you have to do. And then 29593 is a general list for all minors related to hunting. And that's where the big confusion comes in with that. And so Corey Sherfisi says that the or is a full stop after 941.28. So if you're under 18, short barrel rifle, short barrel shotgun is a hard stop. The next section, he then argues, only applies if you're under 16 because it requires compliance with both of those statutes, which would then say that even though the second statute is not age specific, that it relegates that second statute subject to the first statute, which is age specific.
And Kyle can't be out of compliance with a statute that doesn't apply to him by age.
Right. So the argument or the basic conclusion is that this law does not apply to a 16 or 17-year-old who is not hunting. Or no, actually it does not apply to a 16 or 17-year-old, full stop. So long as their rifle,
you'll never collect the other statute.
Right. So long as they are not in violation by having a short barrel rifle or a short barreled shotgun.
Which philosophically, and I agree with that interpretation, but philosophically you can understand how the state or anyone else looks at this and says, nobody on earth would write this that way if they intended for this to not apply to 16 and 17-year-olds.
They would just write this doesn't apply to 16 or 17-year-olds, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of programming language in legislation. I mean, that's how I talk about it on my channel, which is that, yeah, you can get certain savings clauses from courts, especially if they want to be more active or not. But for the most part, you write this, you pass it, and then you figure out what it does, what the command line actually winds up doing. And you read through all this and I say, yeah, you have to be out of compliance with both of those statutes. The first one doesn't apply to you at all. You can't be out of compliance with it. And so you're good.
Yeah. And the idea of why you write a statute in this way, if we're being deferential in saying that the legislature planned it this way, the main reason is to talk about what I was discussing earlier. If you've got, in particular, if you're trying to address in the early 90s, gang violence in metro areas of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, Green Bay, what's the other one? Milwaukee. If you're trying to address that type of violence and you don't see a lot of long barrel rifles in the 90s, probably in part because I believe at that time we were either flirting with or we had the assault weapons ban of the Clinton era, right? And so you actually have less access to those types of weapons in the early 90s than you do today. And so maybe they didn't think it was as big of a deal to address those. But you do have a handgun problem in the 90s. Going up, I think 1996 was one of the peak crime years in U.S. history, and especially for gun violence. So we're leading up to that. So that if they're trying to address handguns, and then if you look at the other dangerous weapons, you're talking about brass knuckles, you're talking about nunchucks, you've got cestus. Yeah, you've got a cestus, which would be some sort of knuckle blade. Or similar material weighted with metal or other substance worn on the hand. Shurikens. You got throwing stars.
This is what your legislatures are writing, by the way. Just so we're clear, this is not a unique set of things to randomly find.
This is my favorite word in a Wisconsin statute. A Manriki Gusari, which is, I think, in English, a meteor hammer, basically. You've got a chain with a weight on the end of it, and you're Jackie Chan. You're like, spinning this thing around like a monster.
I want the background. I want the behind the scenes of how this particular list was arrived at, and whether they were fighting over this, whether they watched ninja movies. I don't know what was happening.
You can imagine the legislative aide who's helping write the dangerous weapons statute cracking his knuckles and saying, "Yes, sir, I am somewhat of a weapons expert."
I want you to watch The Warriors and just name everything they use, please.
But oh my goodness. But I'm surprised that a dangerous weapon is not what they don't have in here is actually kind of Shocking, right? They don't have like a knife with a blade length over 7 inches, for example. They don't
They don't
have
really have any knife references, do they?
no, no. They don't have a switchblade, which the switchblade may be illegal in some other section of the
That's
statute.
right.
But I'm actually surprised that a knife with a blade length or a double-sided knife is not listed in this statute specifically. Because that could, in a lot of states, those would be classified as dangerous weapons. And I think in Minnesota, there's a certain knife length that you need a permit to carry above that knife length, in public. So, but yeah, so if you're trying to deal with violence that is more likely a result of a gang type scenario, you can write a statute in this way that deals with mainly handguns and some sort of melee weapons that are out there, concealable melee weapons like brass knuckles, awesome melee weapons like nunchucks, and really address that problem without infringing on hunting, without infringing on a kid on his own property, with a gun, because mere possession is enough. So a kid's got, his rifle on a rack, in his room. Kid's got a rifle in the rifle or a shotgun sitting in the gun rack of his truck. Very common in the Midwest. In fact, it's taken them a long time to get around people bringing rifles to school because they would go hunting after school. Now you basically have to keep those in your trunk and not tell anybody. But not all that long ago, in Texas, still a rifle on the back window of your truck would be a common thing.
Well, and I think that might be something that's lost culturally, depending on where you live or not. I've been in Michigan for roughly my whole life, and throughout my youth, you would absolutely have hunting season day starts as almost a holiday. A lot of the kids would go out with their dad or their parents, and that's exactly what the parking lot would look like. And so, you do have different approaches. I got to be honest with you. I think I always ever read this statute and just stopped at firearm because I was done. That is an amusing set of weapons listed in that first paragraph.
I would have never read 3C except for this specific, like when I was diving into this issue going, okay, because I wanted to know, right? Did this kid illegally bring a gun? Did he grab a firearm that he shouldn't have? So I did a deep dive into the statute right away. And I was like, no, I don't think so. That's amazing. and I'll be deferential to the state here. I can almost guarantee that if Kyle and Dominic Black had sat down and had a conversation about whether or not, like, if they had been thinking rather than responding to riots and fires, they'd said, can you bring a gun around? They would have said, no way, this is legal, right? They would have said, because and this is a point the state was trying to make. You knew you couldn't buy it. And then they tried to get him to say, you knew you couldn't possess it. And he smartly did not ever he said, no, I did not know that. And that was a very good answer. But I think if everybody's honest and there's nothing on the line, you go, right. If you're not in a riot and you're sitting down, you say, Kyle, you're 17. Can you walk around the streets of Kenosha with an AR-15 strapped to you? He'd say, as long as no one knows I'm 17. I think that would be the rational answer there. But it turns out, and that's the problem with this law, and that's what the judge was getting to as well. It's like, if it's taking us all this time to figure this out, we've had months and months and months, and we still can't figure it out. How's an ordinary citizen supposed to comply with this law?
Yeah, that's where he wound up, right? Is that you need to have clarity in the law.
Yeah. So there you go, Ryan Long. It does not blow up the whole statute, though. That is one thing that was, I don't want to say it was dishonest, but it was an overreach by Krause when he says it blows blows up the whole law. It's like, no, if he's 15, he's liable. Guaranteed, he's liable. If he's 14, 11, 12, 13, anything under 16, it just
creates the window.
Yeah, it just seems like the Wisconsin legislature had an idea, whether conscious or subconscious, to preserve the this rifle ownership and use for kids who are 16 and 17.
So pour out an odd bag of Balmore left right Spirits flow as the ones who get unemployed. So pour out a glass for the tea post on Twitter as we hear Lost Blaming tonight. From the white shores of Nairn to the hills of Glenlivet, there's no one who explains the thought better than Nick. So pour out a glass for the ones who have